Hey guys, how you doing? I guess I'm making another video. I just felt like it right before I go to sleep here. Um, I'm just thinking about, like, I'm a communist, right? This is treading on sacred ground for capitalists, the capitalist class, conservatives especially. I say out loud that I'm a communist, and they lose their minds. Like, it's the conversation that I'm having with these people is in an insane place. It immediately goes to, like, here are all the atrocities that happened immediately. And when we start to talk about those atrocities, it really does end up just being a conversation about a people overcoming adversity in their society and how uh, and how they mismanaged these societal things. But in the end, it all just sounds like armchair quarterbacking. It just sounds like these guys are like, oh yeah, I could have handled that way better. I could have handled that famine way better. Uh, I could have rebuilt the prison system so much better in Russia, right? I talked to a guy about the gulags, which, I mean, the communists inherited the gulags from the kings, and it's like they're heading into a world war. you know, they're heading into a world war, uh, and you want them to spend time building prisons or like refurbishing the prisons, I guess, is the argument. Um, I just don't. I just don't think you're being fair to the position that the Russians were in, and I just don't even feel like you're being fair to, like, the beginning of communism. Yeah, it's rife with mistakes and ridiculous nonsense, right? For sure. People have been really pointing out Cambodia a lot recently. Like, Cambodia, that guy was insane. Like, that guy was insane. It doesn't matter what his ideology was, it doesn't matter what he believed. If he had been holding on to a Bible, he would have acted in the same way. Without a doubt. And I don't understand why someone can be a sociopathic, crazed murderer, uh, but also not be considered a liar or a fraud, right? Like, why is it that uh, the people who communists denounce are still uh, are still brought up in the conversation of communism, right? Like, those are the people who we would use as an example what not to do, right? We literally say this. And this is the thing that really drives me crazy, is that these guys entrench communism in this point because they refuse, and they don't know the history of, and they refuse to acknowledge that communism has evolved, right? That communism as a way of thinking, communism as a way of being, has changed. And that there are societies who have looked at communist societies and socialist societies and have thought to themselves, huh, this idea right here could work. This idea could be very helpful in our society. Uh, I do think that what people, the capitalists, are wary of, right? I think the capitalists are wary of revolution, which seems to be the way the communists come into power. Uh, as a communist, facing up against what I consider to be an insane death cult, look at the states, look at the civil war they're going in, the fact that they're completely ignoring climate change. The capitalists are on a death path. They are on a death march. They are committing suicide. They're committing a mass suicide. And they can bring us all down with them. They can. They can bring us all down with them. And so in the face of that, I'm absolutely going to say, oh, I would like to do the opposite, please. Some people who are long dead did some horrible things with communism. Oh, okay. I don't care. I mean, I do care. I research it. I know a lot about it, but I don't care at the same time. I live here. I live now. And I think that we can take ideas from communism and put them into our society and improve our society in such a way as to avoid revolution, right? As a communist, I am not opposed to revolution. I am not opposed to revolution whatsoever. But I would rather not do it. I would rather we not have a revolution. If you look down into the States, you can see what a revolution looks like. And it is a civil war. And we can go down that trajectory. We're on that trajectory. We're walking down that trajectory. For sure. And doing anything at this point, doing anything different than what we're seeing in the United States would be an improvement. You can't miss with this one. Passing any piece of legislation, saying anything to help people would be an improvement over the society collapsing into civil war. This Kyle Rittenhouse fellow, his lawyer proclaimed that Kyle Rittenhouse's shooting of murder of two protesters, will be the spark and will be remembered historically as the spark for the new civil war. Yay. That's capitalism that's doing that. We know why that's happening. And it's because the capitalists refuse to respond rationally to what's happening in front of them and have descended into ideological fundamentalism and a stupid stupor. They're in this torpor where they believe themselves to be deities instead of just stupid men. And like, Trump proves without a doubt that the presidency itself is just a pissing match, right? Like, they're all in the same club, they work for the same people, and there's no way to change that through the democratic process. Here in Canada, it's different. And here in Canada, it looks as though we're going to pass some socialist legislation. We're going to do what the communists think is a good idea. We're going to make sure that if we are going to have a market system, we're going to ensure that everyone has access to that market to the degree that it meets their survival needs. And if a person wishes to sell their labor into the market to make extra, they should be permitted to do so. And this would all happen with a basic income. And it looks like Justin Trudeau is going to do it. So, I don't particularly take seriously capitalist critiques of communism. Like, Karl Marx's critique of capitalism is thorough. It's very, very thorough. The only critique that capitalists have of communists and communism is to demonize them. They don't actually have a critique of communism. Jordan Peterson gave a critique of Karl Marx's work, the Communist Manifesto, but he did not read any further than that, certainly, and he didn't really understand fundamentally that communism has grown and changed and has experienced there are different ways of looking at communism and socialism. It has there's an array of discussion and conversation going on. that it isn't one single thing. And ideas like universal healthcare, the idea that everyone should have healthcare, comes straight out of communism. That's a communist idea, for sure. At least a socialist idea. And it frustrates me a great deal. Like, the Soviet Union went from being a feudal monarchy to being the first people into space. They were the first ones into space. They were the first ones to put a life form into space and bring it back successfully. And their journey into space inspired the Americans to be the first to put a man on the moon. Which they did, right? But we should not pretend at all, right? People people say, like, every society that's done communism has ended in ruin. Well, every society's ended in ruin. What are you talking about? Like, they all do that. That's just humans for you. That's just humans for you, bud. The ones that seem to have figured out how to stop having civil wars are the ones who seem to have figured out that government and society itself exists to make life easier for people. That's the only reason it exists. And if it's making life harder for people, then people have the right to revolt. Right? People have the right to revolt. And we're seeing it right now. But I don't think it can be denied that communism did good things in Russia. Like, I just cannot believe that a society that is making technological breakthroughs to be able to put men into space, to be able to get into space in the first place, to be the first people to do that, is causing that much hardship for their populace. Like, shit does happen in the Russian period, without a doubt. Shit goes down. And it's all tied up in the classic, like, sorry, communism can't cure racism. Sorry. It actually can't cure racism. That's true. Do we believe that capitalism has cured racism? Don't think so. Yeah, don't think so on that count. So, there are forces that are bigger than communism, right? And this is something that doesn't seem to matter to the capitalist, because the capitalist has to believe that capitalism is the greatest force of all, that man is the greatest force. That's what the capitalist has to believe. The communists, like, especially modern day communists, we just don't buy into that. There are forces that are much bigger than us, right? Like, you have to respect the power of the earth, and you have to try to remain in balance with the earth. Like, humanity is going to experience this enormous decline, something it never has experienced before. It's going to experience something that it never has experienced before. Like, we talk about the plague as if the plague was this huge moment. It was the first time in recorded history that human growth declined. There was a lot of death during that period, for sure. And it was the first time in our history that human growth declined. And it took a little while to get back on track. And so the this decline this decline that we're going to go through is it's going to be so thoroughly undeniable. It's going to be so thoroughly undeniable that we will change our society. For sure. We will change our society. Because it's going to be so fucking awful. It is going to be so fucking awful. And no one will take seriously that capitalism is a good system. Not one single person alive will think that capitalism is worth a goddamn. Just in the way that we don't think, that we don't think other death cults are worth a damn. Right? Like, no one is talking about rebooting the Mayan religion, right? No one's talking about rebooting, any of these crazed sort of death cults that prop up over time. Everyone will look back on capitalism and just go, what in the goddamn fuck were these guys thinking? Literally, it's like I'm watching a drug addict, like a junkie drug addict, alcoholic, just throwing himself into a party every single night, and get into so many fights with everybody around him and alienate everybody around him all the time, and just absolutely destroying themselves over and over and over again, all the while chanting and believing completely that they're the greatest, that they're the greatest person alive, that everyone loves them, and that everyone thinks that he's cool. Yeah, it's gonna be a tough time coming. And capitalism's not going to survive. If there are survivors, right? And there will be. Humans are humans. There will be survivors. But not one of them is going to think that capitalism ended up working out. Not one of them. Yeah. And that's why I'm a communist. Because I'm ahead of the curve. Because I'm ahead of the curve. Alright, guys. Do all the things. Hit the dings, hit the bings, hit the subscribers and the likers. Good luck out there, guys. For real. Go talk to your neighbors. Go say hi to your neighbors.